Hello there. Welcome to the channel. Thank you for stopping by. I've got an interesting comparison video for you today. This is something I haven't done before, but I think I'm going to do more of. I really had a good time making this video, so we're going to do a little bit more of this. I've done some analysis with my new Mantis X10 Elite. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, the Mantis X10 Elite, when you take it out of the box, comes in this nice little case. It is a sensor that sits on the rail of your firearm and can tell you some very insightful things about how you're performing, about your grip, about your trigger pull, um, draw speeds, all kinds of things can be measured by this. I'm using it in my home for dry fire training, and I found it really valuable and insightful there. I've already made some adjustments, and I took it out to the range and practiced with those adjustments, and it was better. So I'm fascinated by what this little sensor can tell us. So I wanted to run a comparison. Now, when I first thought of this, I thought, well, I want to run a comparison because I'm looking at expanding my competition capabilities. Right now, I'm a PCC shooter. I've done a little bit of handgun, but I haven't competed much with a handgun, and I want to balance out my skill set a little bit. I want to get into limited optics. So I've been playing with what is going to be my limited optics gun. Now, one of the problems I have is I have a few options. And so I haven't honed in and started truly training with one gun. And that's something I need to do. I need to commit. This is going to be my limited optics gun, and off I go, right? Um, I find myself wanting to shoot a variety of guns and wishy-washy and back and forth. So I thought, well, what if the Mantis could tell me which one I have the best opportunity to start with? So we're going to run a comparison today. The first one, the one that's going to get all the clicks, I think, right now, is the Kimber 2K11. Now, for obvious reasons, the Kimber 2K11 is getting a lot of buzz right now. It is an incredibly good-looking gun. It's getting good reviews online. There's a couple little complaints about it that are easy fixes. Those of you who've been watching my channel, you may have seen that I've done a little bit of fixing on the hot spot that's on the safety lever there. So, but there's very little negative out there on this gun and seems to be overwhelmingly positive. So I wondered, is this the best limited optics option out there that's less than like 2,300, 2,400 bucks? Um, so I wanted to run a comparison. Now, the one gun that I would like to have included in this comparison is the platypus. Now, I've shot a platypus, and I can tell you from experience that the platypus just didn't, I don't know, it didn't perform as well for me. I don't know exactly what it was. Could have just been a bad day, but I shot better with my Prodigy, just second gun we're going to compare here. I shot better with my Prodigy than I did with the Platypus. Now, that doesn't mean the Prodigy's as reliable. That's not what we're getting into. What we're looking is purely at the performance of the gun in my hand and in my buddy Chay's hand. Um, this is my now that there have been very little modifications to, let's start here. There have been very few modifications to the Kimber. Like I said, I smoothed out the back of the safety so that I don't have the hot spot on the inside of my hand, and added the mag well to the gun. That's all that's happened in the optic, and that's it. Other than that, the gun is stock trigger, no adjustments, no changes to this gun at all. So as it sits. The Prodigy, anyone who owns a Prodigy and tries to perform with it or has it for an extended period of time is going to make some changes. Like it's just I thought I was the only one. I've started watching videos. I ain't the only one. So this particular Prodigy has an Atlas trigger, and I've had the trigger weight pulled down, and the trigger weight on this gun, it's pretty light. It's probably about a 2.5 pound trigger pull on this gun, so it's pretty light. But it does have a trigger job done, an Atlas trigger installed. Gave me a little bit of a more reach. Now the Kimber the natural position of the trigger is pretty good for me. I've got big hands, and so this reach, I had somebody with smaller hands shoot this gun, and they complained about how far the trigger was. It's about right for me. In fact, I'd probably have it a little bit bigger if the trigger guard allowed for it. I might have it a little bit longer, but it's a good fit. I did have to. They make triggers that are really short for the Atlas and things. I went with a long pull on from an Atlas trigger onto the Prodigy, and I've been happy with that. It's a good position for my hand. It fits naturally, and it allows me that straight pull. So Prodigy is the first kind of natural comparison that people start to ask questions. Do I buy a Prodigy and fix it up, or do I buy a 2K11 and just run it as it sits? It's a valid question. Third gun is a little bit different than the others, but from a limited optics perspective, I don't know that there could be a more valid comparison, and that is to the CZ Shadow 2. Now, this CZ Shadow 2 again has had some work done. This is a CZ, it's a Shadow 2 Blue. It's like the base model of the Shadow 2. But I've upgraded it, and even with the upgrades and the way that I've done them, it comes in right under the budget of what the 2K11 costs out of the box. So, um, on this particular Shadow 2, you can see I've put the lock grips on there. This gun fits my hand like a glove. It is so nice, and I love these grips. I mean, it's like glue. So I'm a really big fan there. Um, this gun also has the Cajun Gunworks trigger kit in it. Um, and I have I could have sent this gun off and had Cajun do the install, or I had the option to have that sent to me and do the work myself, which I did. And I think it came out pretty good. I compared this to um, a trigger that someone had on their gun that Cajun had done, and there's a difference, no denying that Cajun Gunworks doing the work there. They probably do a better job than I did, but it's a negligible difference. And for not having to wait the several weeks, being able to dig into the gun and get familiar with it for me is a lot of you have seen. I like to do the work on my own guns. It gets me familiar with the gun. I love to do it. It's a great hobby, so that's something that I like to do. So I did the trigger work on the Shadow 2 here. And then the last thing it has, this is the only gun that I have that has a gas pedal on it. Um, I love the way my hand sits with this particular gun. It sits there perfect and natural, and I really, really like it. I did find early on that I was torquing the gun by putting a whole lot of pressure on there, and I wanted to just grab a hold and push down. And I found that it really impacted my accuracy. I've learned to kind of get away from that a little bit, and I'm sure if this becomes my limited optics gun, I'll get better at that as time goes on. So, those are our three guns with which we did a comparison. I say we because I invited my friend Che out for the weekend with me, and he and I went out on a Saturday morning. And later in the morning than we would have liked in the Arizona heat. It was freaking hot. Um, we got out there and we shot each of these three guns, and we shot essentially two bill drills with each gun. The first one, the intent was we're going to shoot this for accuracy and not be rushing it, and the goal was to get the same kind of shot time on each of the guns. You know, run it in the same number of seconds for the six shots. And that worked okay. And then the second one was to look, we're going to see, you know, if we put the pedal to the metal a little bit and try and go faster, focusing more on getting speed while being accurate. What can we do? So we're measuring a few things as we run these guns kind of back to back. So you're going to see me shoot each gun followed by Che shooting each gun. I'll talk a little bit in between, and we'll do some analysis and show you what the Mantis told us, and then we'll look at the results at the end and see how that came out. So, with no further ado, let's jump into the footage. I'll show you what happened here. First of all, like I said, we're starting here with the Shadow 2, Cajun Gunworks trigger, gas pedal, and this is my first go with the gun. Again, you'll see that steady cadence that I'm going for. Okay, Che is a little bit less experienced shooter. He's been shooting a while. He's had guns, but he's never done any kind of training or gotten serious around improving his shooting. So a lot of you watching are going to see some things that Che can work on, and you'll see tons of things I can work on too. Um, but Che's trying a lot of new things here. So we're going to get the gun in my hand. Okay. The gun in my hand and the gun in Che's hand to kind of see what a mediocre shooter in me and a newer shooter in Che, what these guns look like. So results with the Shadow 2. As you can see for me, the muzzle rise was 13.91 degrees. Recoil width, that's how wide is that recoil channel when that gun is coming up? Is it going to the left or right? How far? It's the width on that was 1.25 degrees. The recoil angle, how far to the right or left, was 3.79 consistently, and the hit factor 11.6. That's me. You can see Che's numbers there for a comparison as we move on to into the next gun. Next up is the Kimber. Now, as a reminder, the Kimber here, it's been very little modification, nothing to the functionality of the gun, just got rid of a hot spot on the safety. Basically, it's out of the box. All right, speed it up a little bit. Now, Che. Okay, so the Kimber 2K11 muzzle rise for me 3.27. Muzzle rise for Che came down quite a bit, 13.39. And then we've got the recoil width on me. You can see how narrow that was on the width, right and left, and the angle on it, 0.03. My hit factor among all that was 13.33. And you can see the comparisons there on Che. Obviously, an improvement over what the numbers were before. Now, we're going to move into the Prodigy. Again, this Prodigy, we've got the Atlas trigger in it. That's really all that's been done. It's got that Atlas trigger. The trigger pull's been lightened down, and that flat face trigger put in there for a little bit more comfort for my hand. Watch what happens to Che here. Tough to catch, but you hear it on that last one. Watch this. Okay, so on the Prodigy, Muzzle rise 1401. Recoil width, again, not bad, 1.81. Recoil angle 5.74 degrees, and my hit factor dropped to 11.2. Again, Che with the Prodigy. Muzzle rise. Recoil width was a little wider. Recoil angle came off to the right for him quite a bit, and his hit factor was low. Honestly, that last shot really killed it. It was he had a mic in there. Because of that, he kind of double hammered that trigger. Okay, for the results, I was actually really surprised how clean this outcome was. The 2K11 really shined for me, especially when you look at the recoil width and the recoil angle. Again, the recoil width is how much does the recoil vary left to right, which was less than 1 degree, but the recoil angle, it was almost perfectly zero on average. It averaged 0.03 degrees, which obviously impacted that hit factor. For Che, a less experienced shooter, that gun still performed the highest of the three, and you can really see that difference on the muzzle rise for Che. Now, here's a little bit of bonus footage of me shooting from first person perspective. First, the 2K11, and then the Shadow 2. So from behind the gun, not a massive difference on those two guns. But for me, brand new gun that I probably personally have about 250 rounds through versus a little bit older gun, nothing crazy, but I probably have 1,200 rounds through this gun. And I was really surprised. I went into this expecting my Shadow 2 to be the better performer for me. Why? It's more comfortable in my hand. It fits my hand a little bit better. Got the gas pedal on there. It's got the trigger work, the gunwork, Cajun Gunworks trigger. There we go. Um, and it just feels more natural in my hand. It, I like the weight of the gun. If you were to hand me the gun and I was blind testing on this, I would prefer the feel of this gun in my hand. I thought that would translate into results on the range. And it didn't perform bad. And I know that if I choose this as my limited optics gun and I train with this gun and make it my focus, I can make it perform for me much better than anything else on the table because I'll be giving it my full attention and I'll become an expert with this gun. Um, but that's I expected it to be the best out of the gate because I have the most rounds through it. Um, well, that's not necessarily true. I probably have more rounds over time through this gun, but I don't trust this gun for performance like I would trust that one, so I wouldn't have chosen it for my limited optics gun. I've had some malfunctions, some failures to feed, ejection issues here and there. Not so that I would call this unreliable, really, for 2011, but it has not performed up to a standard that I would like. I'm a Glock guy and I'm used to that kind of performance, so this hasn't met that bar for sure. But enter the 2K11. Pretty gun. I thought it would shoot smooth and be comfortable. I wanted a double stack 1911 um, to have in my collection, and I thought, hey, this will be a fun gun for me to shoot. It's a reasonably priced double stack 1911, so I was excited about it and was curious to see how it would perform against this. But I didn't expect it to win. Being honest, I expected the Shadow 2 to outperform it. But in my hand, even with as little experience as I have with this gun, it just naturally shot better. The recoil was more straight in line, had less deviation off of zero, and came right back to that natural aim position. Now, the Shadow 2 comes back as well, but I have to make micro adjustments left and right just slightly that I don't have to make with the Kimber. And the Mantis proved that to me. In shooting at the range, what I saw was this gun was a little bit more accurate for me consistently, especially when I sped up. When I sped up a little bit, not going for record times or anything, but when I sped up a little bit, I was able to control this recoil more consistently and naturally than I was even with my Shadow 2. So, surprising results for me, maybe not surprising for the internet, but another video that you'll find out there that says maybe you should consider the Kimber 2K11 for the money. It might be the best value for a limited optics gun that there is. And I am thrilled to have this gun in my arsenal. And I will start practicing with this. And um, it may have won its spot as my limited optics option. So there you are, guys. Thank you for stopping by again. I appreciate you being here. Um, like, subscribe, do all the stuff you're supposed to do so I can keep doing the stuff I like to do. Um, and we'll see you out on the range.